You've decided to make singing your vocation. Now what? You may be struggling to balance your life and a career in music. Are you curious about how other singers make it or how they've dealt with success and failure? Do you wonder what their biggest challenges have been, or how about what they've learned on their journey and what's important to them today? Hi, I'm Valerie Day, a singer, educator, and creative explorer. You might know me from my work with the Grammy-nominated band New Shoes. Welcome to Living a Vocal Life, where I interview singers who have succeeded in creating a life in music. You'll hear from vocalists of all genres in different stages of their careers, including singers who've been on the Billboard charts and those who are teaching the next generation. What do they have in common? They're all performers with amazing stories to tell and experiences to share. In our conversations, you'll learn what inspired them to become a singer, the kinds of challenges they've encountered, and how they've overcome them. I'll also share what I've learned on my own journey as a singer and educator, practical tools and insights that will help you to live your best, most authentic vocal life. So what is your relationship with practicing? Is each session like a date with someone that you love being with and who loves being with you? Or is it like a marriage that's gone stale from inattentiveness and boredom? In other words, is your relationship with your practice rewarding, or is it just another thing to tick off your list? Or worse, beat yourself up about because you're not practicing often enough or well enough? My relationship with practicing is kind of a love-hate thing. I've tried a gazillion strategies over the years and tested some of them with my students. Here's what I've learned about staying connected to why I practice in the first place and some strategies for finding the time to do it. Strategies are helpful, but it all starts with how you feel about practicing. What and how you practice matters, but the fuel for showing up every day for yourself and your singing comes from why you practice in the first place. That why, that initial spark that ignited your desire to become a singer, is something you need to keep alive. If you're in music for the long haul, through thick and thin, success or failure, you need to stay connected with the part of you that loves to sing. Just like a relationship, your practice needs nurturing. It's essential to pay attention to it, checking in every day to see how it's doing, giving it the love and care it needs to grow. When your relationship with your practice is healthy, procrastination is easier to keep at bay. You can pick up where you left off in your last session, and before you know it, find yourself immersed and in flow. Connecting your practice to your musical values helps too. Let's say that one of your musical values is improvisation. You've always wanted to feel more confident as an improviser, so you decide to make that one of your musical goals. So what do you need to practice to achieve that goal? You could start by brainstorming a list of possibilities. Things like a book with exercises for vocal improvisation, or listening sessions where you sing with the masters of improv like Ella Fitzgerald and Sarah Vaughan. Your list might also include a voice teacher that you'd like to study with who specializes in vocal improvisation. Now that you have your list, it's time to take action. You order the vocal improv book, and while you're waiting for it to arrive, you learn a scat solo, note for note, that you've discovered on YouTube. When the book lands in your mailbox, you go through it and work through the material. When you've gone as far as you can on your own, you contact a teacher and set up some lessons to get additional help and feedback. Or maybe one of your musical values is emotional expression. You've been working on some new material. You've worked on technique and memorized the melody and lyrics, but now when you sing the song, it sounds lifeless, devoid of feeling. To breathe new life into your performance, you decide to reconnect to the story of the song. You spend some time imagining different scenarios, who you are, who you're singing to, where you are, and why you're singing the song. After fleshing out these scenarios and writing them down, you sing the song using each one as a template for creating emotion. You record yourself, listen to the results, and sing again. Now you can hear which scenario best expresses the feeling you want to share with an audience. These are just two examples of how you can transform your practice by connecting your musical values and goals. Now you have the beginnings of a practice plan that will make it easier to see what to practice next and connect your practice to your musical values. One of my favorite strategies for practicing is to view it as play. Meditation teacher Thanissaro Bhikkhu writes about this concept in his book, The Joy of Effort. He says, the key to maintaining your inspiration in the day-to-day work of practice is to approach it as play, a happy opportunity to master practical skills, to raise questions, experiment, and explore. The path doesn't save all its pleasure for the end. You can enjoy it now. I think your relationship to your practice will shift when you approach it as an opportunity to experiment and explore. Instead of dreading your practice sessions, you'll look forward to them. Your mistakes, a note you can't quite hit, the lyric that stubbornly refuses to be memorized, will give you information that you can use to improve. Practicing becomes a puzzle, a game that you can play where you find the gaps in your abilities and fill them in. And when it goes well, you can figure out how you did it. Which notes did you lean on or scoop into? What phrases gave you chills because of the intensity of the dynamics? How did your body, mind, and emotions integrate to create the feeling that you want to convey? When you've learned what made your performance stronger, you can apply what you've learned to other songs. Concepts become global, and the time it takes to learn new music decreases. Like with any creative enterprise, you'll still rub up against frustration. It's challenging to reach for a goal and fall short. But failure is an essential part of learning. When you know how and what to practice, you'll feel confident that your time, energy, and effort are worthwhile and that you'll ultimately succeed. In other words, rote practicing is a waste of time. Plus, it's boring. So let's go from mindset to skill set. You figured out what you need to practice and why. Now for the hard part, finding time to do it. As the virtuoso pianist Vladimir Horowitz said, if I skip practice for one day, I notice. If I skip practice for 2 days, my wife notices. If I skip practice for 3 days, the world notices. As a singer, you already know that daily practice is essential for learning new skills and retaining old ones. Singing every day keeps your body in shape and your mind and musical memory sharp. Regular practice also makes it easier to achieve your musical goals. But finding the time to do it is a struggle for most of us. When you're busy in school, working 9 to 5, or a caretaker for others, or working on your music career, it's easy for practicing to end up at the bottom of your to-do list. I'd like to share some strategies that have made it easier for my students and me to find time for practicing. But before we get to those, I want to address the number one question singers ask when it comes to their practice sessions. How much practice is enough? First, it depends on the quality of your practice. To get the most out of your practice, you need to work at the edge of your ability to keep your brain engaged and stretch your learning capacity. Rote practicing won't do either of those things. The quality of your practice is more important than the quantity. That said, quantity does matter. Research shows that world-class experts, chess players, novelists, athletes, and musicians practice between 3 to 5 hours a day. I know what you're thinking, but I don't have 3 to 5 hours a day to practice. Believe me, I understand. It's not easy to find that many hours in a day. So begin with a smaller chunk of time, even 15 or 20 minutes. The trick is to stick with it and practice for that amount every day. So here's a story that illustrates how even a small amount of practice time every day can grow your musical abilities. My father loved to sing and had a beautiful lyric baritone voice. When he was in medical school, he was in a barbershop quartet called the Forcep Four.
We're the Forcep Four. We're the Forcep Four. We always amputate what we can't alleviate. We are the Forcep Four.
The quartet traveled throughout the Northwest, competing in barbershop competitions, which they consistently won. All 4 men in this group were in medical school. They were extremely busy studying, performing autopsies at night, medical school stuff. It's demanding and time-consuming work. So where did they find the time to practice? Every day on their lunch break, they rehearsed in a stairwell at the school for 15 minutes. That's all the time they had. But they kept beating the groups that got together once a week for 2 to 3 hours. How did they do that? Well, they had excellent arrangements and beautiful voices, but my dad would tell you it's because they rehearsed every day and reinforced what they had learned the day before. So start small. 15 or 20-minute sessions work well for learning new material and will help you get in the habit of practicing. But eventually, you'll need to practice for longer to build your strength and stamina. Think about it like training for a marathon. You wouldn't just get up one day and head outside to run a 10K marathon, especially if you're starting out as a couch potato. And if you've got a gig coming up that is 2 to 3 hours long, you'll need to start practicing for it a month or two in advance so you can build up to singing for that amount of time. The less strength you have to begin with, the more time you'll need to train to build vocal stamina. Again, start small. Practice for 15 minutes to a half an hour for a few days. If that's going well and your voice doesn't feel too fatigued, add an additional 15 minutes to your sessions. Repeat this process until you're up to a full hour of singing a day. For that 2 to 3 hour gig, you'll want to practice at least an hour to an hour and a half a day. Once you've built up your stamina, add more time. Alternate between 1 hour a day to 2 to 3 hours the next day. This schedule will keep you from overdoing it. You'll be building stamina on the days where you sing longer and then maintaining your stamina on the 1 hour days. One caveat, on the days that you're performing, don't practice this much. You don't want to use it up before you even get to the show. So you might practice warming up a half an hour in the morning and then maybe a half an hour, a couple hours before your performance, and do some sirens like I've talked about in previous podcasts before you actually perform. Now, I know this is a lot. It's a lot of time, but there are ways to fit that much singing into your life. So here are 9 strategies that will help you find time to practice and discover the joy in making music every day. First, prepare the space. Whether it's an entire room or a corner of your kitchen, make sure you have some space that's dedicated solely to your practice sessions. Have all the tools and music you need on hand so when it's time to practice, you can dive right in. You don't want anything keeping you from taking that first step and singing that first note. If you're traveling or don't have the luxury of a dedicated physical space, create a virtual one. You can keep your recordings, sheet music, and practice journal at your fingertips with a cloud-based app like Evernote. Whether I'm at home or on the road, I use Evernote for everything having to do with my practice sessions. I'll put a link in the show notes so you can check it out for yourself. Strategy number 2, just begin. This is harder than it looks. As meditation teacher Sharon Salzberg says, just put your body there. It's the first step. When I'm having a hard time practicing, I put my body in my practice space and then I've begun. Getting started is often the highest hurdle. Strategy number 3, keep a practice journal. Knowing what you did the day before, how it went, and where you left off will give you a better idea of what to practice today. Whether you keep a journal in the cloud or a paper notebook, there are many creative ways you can use journaling to support your practice. I've created a practice journal that you can download for free on my website. I'll put a link to it in the show notes for you. Strategy number 4. I often use a timer and set it for 15, 20, or 30 minutes so that my practice sessions aren't open-ended. I know I can at least commit to that much time. Once I begin and get into a flow, time flies. Before I know it, I've accomplished my practice goal for the day. If I have more time in my schedule, I just keep going. Strategy number 5. Practice in small chunks throughout the day. If you can't find an hour to practice, try breaking your practice time into smaller chunks that you can squeeze in throughout your day. A half an hour in the morning, at lunchtime, and after dinner adds up and won't feel as hard to schedule as an hour and a half. Strategy number 6. This is one of my favorites. Reward yourself. This one might seem crazy, but it works. Chocolate kisses and gold stars aren't just for kids. Small rewards like these can motivate you too. I had a student who struggled with ADD and found it almost impossible to focus on practicing. She figured out a fabulous way to reward herself, which helped her to practice more consistently. Every time she practiced, she put some money in a tip jar. At the end of each month, she took the money and treated herself to whatever her heart desired. It worked. You could also reward yourself with a guilty pleasure like social media scrolling for 20 minutes or window shopping online for that new microphone you've been saving up for. The possibilities are endless. Strategy number 7. Give yourself a performance goal. There's nothing like a little external pressure to motivate you to practice. If you don't have performances, create some. Karaoke night, a video for your friends and family, a Facebook or Instagram live session, a demo recording for your website. Get creative about finding ways to sing in front of others. Figure out a realistic date for your performance, one that gives you enough time to prepare but that's not too far out in the future, and invite people to attend. Strategy number 8. Find a practice partner. This is also one of my favorites. Do you have a friend who has trouble finding time or motivation to practice? Ask them to be your practice partner. Set up a time each week to share your practice goals and commitments. Check back in the following week to see how it went for you both. An accountability partner who cheers you on will inject some fun and camaraderie into your practice. You can celebrate together when you're successful and encourage each other to keep going when you're flagging. Strategy number 9. Mentor, coach, or teacher. Another way to support your practice is to get help from someone who's ahead of you on the path. A mentor, coach, or teacher can help you accelerate your journey by sharing the wisdom, experience, and insights they've gleaned from their own. So those are my 9 strategies for making more time for your practice. I have just 2 more thoughts for you about the pleasure and reward of a daily practice. As conductor and author Benjamin Zander writes, the major difference between the best and the average is that the best get as much pleasure from practice as performance. Think about it. How much time will you spend performing in the years to come? How much time will you spend practicing? The ratio might change in different seasons of your life, but the amount of time you spend practicing will likely be more than the amount of time you spend performing. A daily practice that brings you pleasure is one you'll continue with. Your small, consistent steps towards mastery become their own reward. Practicing is also a relationship for life. The skills you learn from practicing will help you grow as a singer and empower you to grow as a person. When you have a healthy relationship with your practice, you'll become more creative, resourceful, resilient, and whole in your life. Each practice session builds your capacity to focus, solve problems, and nurture and care for your creativity. You'll also cultivate curiosity and a willingness to fail, one of the most critical skills of all in your life as an artist. And, like healthy relationships that you've invested in over time, your practice will always be there for you. If you've taken a break for any reason, you can pick up where you left off, like a conversation between 2 lifelong friends that never ends. Practicing music is a practice for living. Isn't that a marvelous thought? What better reason could there be to do it? I hope this podcast episode has given you some insights and practical tools that will make your practicing more consistent and pleasurable. If you know a singer who might benefit from this episode, please share it with them. I'd also love to hear about your journey with practicing. What strategies work best for you? You can always get in touch on my website, ValerieDaySings.com. While you're there, check out the complete show notes for this episode and more offerings for singers. You'll also find some information about my online course, Becoming a Singer, that will launch in the fall of 2020. If you'd like to hear more, please subscribe on iTunes or wherever you go for podcasts. Better yet, leave a review. The more reviews, the easier it will be for other singers to find this podcast. Until next time, be well, keep singing, and thanks for listening.